Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Gas Leak podcast brought to you by Bristol Live. This is the podcast for all things discussion on Bristol Rovers. My name's Dan Hargraves. I'm the Bristol Rovers reporter at Bristol Live. I'm delighted to say that Rovers fan Jake Woodman has joined me for this evening's episode. Jake, how are you, mate? I know it's a couple of days after the Harrogate game. Are you still disappointed by the result, and are you still, I guess, hurting from it?
Yeah, disappointed. I think the key word I used several times to get over that, but I think there's no point in dwelling on top of the first game for too long. But it does leave a bit of a sting, I think, especially with all the optimism going in and for the game to win like that. It's been a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, we all know about Rovers' opening day record off the top of my head. Maybe it's like one or two wins this millennium. We know that traditionally Rovers don't do very well on the opening day. But yeah, I guess with all due respect to Harrogate, they had their game plan, they executed it very well. But I think when we all saw the fixtures come out, that looked like a great opener considering Rovers had kind of gone 10 games without a win at the end of last season. I mean, did you see it that way? Did you kind of expect it to be not an easy win? There's not going to be an easy win this season, but maybe a more favourable fixture.
Yeah, of course, John. And no team has a divine right to win every game, of course. But you look at the opening three home fixtures, you kind of look at it. I said if Rovers want to make a good start from the opening three home games, they need at least seven. I'd say realistically, you're not going to win every game, but to lose in just in the situation the whole of the second half went, and the fact that we've come away with no points from a relatively winnable game there against a side in Harrogate, which they could have a surprise season, but realistically they're not going to be challenging near the top end. Is wasn't the result we were all looking for.
Mm. But this start at the beginning of the day where well actually we'll go into the new striker later because he was actually brought out first, but I think we've been waiting for the last 3 months since the news went out that Darrell Clarke would be coming back for his first proper game at the moment. I know there was that Coventry fixture, but yeah, I thought personally it was a brilliant atmosphere on Saturday. He got the reception he wanted. I mean, has it kind of sunk in now? That I know you were at the fans forum. You spoke to Darrell. You asked him a question. Has it sunk in now that Darrell's back? This is Darrell Clarke's Bristol Rovers again, and this is Darrell Clarke hopefully trying to amend for any unfinished business from last time.
Yeah, 100%. I think what's also happened very quickly is the proverbial honeymoon period is ended very quickly, almost before it's even started, really. And I think people are realizing now, like, this is business again. The sentimental aspect is over. I remember waking up or reading the news on the evening it came through, but it's one of those moments where when Darrell was reappointed, sort of people asked, "Where were you?" And I was like driving home and stuff like that. But now sort of reality sort of sunk in a little bit. I think people have realised how much of a task that Darrell's got on his hands following the weekend.
So when go back to that, I think it was May. It was like the beginning of May, wasn't it? So what you were driving home, you checked your
Yeah,
phone. Was like the group chat buzzing
yeah.
or
My
something?
phone was pinging up. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and everyone's messaging me, what the hell's going on? And I saw Darrell's come back, and like my smile was ear to ear, and it was a great feeling. Obviously, the content that Rovers were putting out, they were milking that for all that it's worth, and all the interviews he was giving, it was great.
Mm.
But I think very quickly, so since pre-season started, and there is still gaping holes in the squad which do need to be filled. I think people are it's sort of the blooms off the rose quite quickly, and that's not nothing on Darrell, but it's a tough division to get out of. Darrell knows that, and I think the onus is on everybody to start pulling forward now.
Yeah, I think Saturday would have taught him quite a lot about his players. I know that he was
Mm.
particularly keen to get pre-season out of the way and kind of see them in the heat of competitive battle. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks with the transfer market still open, and we'll get onto that and what Rovers probably need later on. But just final thoughts from Harrogate. Obviously, if we're trying to pull out any sort of positives, I guess the obvious discussion point would be that first kind of half hour, 35 minutes. It was like deja vu, I guess. I think quite a few of those games last season, especially towards the end, not really tested too much defensively, but managed to create a few chances and just can't put that ball in the back of the net. I guess, would you agree with that? I guess that is
Yeah,
deja vu.
it felt like that, and I said that following the game as well. It felt like a lot of the games in the second half of last season, and I know that was incredibly poor. But the fact is, kind of followed a similar kind of blueprint as last season was. I think was one of the main criticisms, and as I said before, it's important not to get hung up on the first game of the season, but there are real criticisms there, and you can look at two things from more than one perspective. Yeah, you're disappointed, but it's the first game. But the fact that we started the game so well, and I think there was a bit of a stoppage in play due to an injury, and I think once the game restarted from that, I do think we really recovered from the stoppage. And like I said, the second half, and I said at half time, the longer it goes on at 0-0, Harrogate fancy their chances and only took a chance and they got their reward for it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a draw probably would have been the fair result. I know they had the chance at
Mm,
the beginning, but I don't think Rovers did enough across the entire 90 to kind of deserve or warrant a victory. I think Harrison takes that chance kind of after Harrogate's goal. I think goes 1-1, finishes 1-1. I think we all come away saying, "Well, look, it wasn't the ideal start, but at least it's not a defeat. At least they've come back. At least they've kind of not stopped the rock because it's still another game without a
mm,
win, but it's something there on the board." But look, there's a few takeaways, I guess, from that. I kind of wanted to talk about maybe some of the players that were
mm,
involved on Saturday. Camille Conte got his first 90 minutes since he played in Boxing Day
mm.
against Exeter City. Obviously, he's had a nasty kind of 8 months now with a bone infection that just sounded like an awful thing to deal with. But I noticed that there's been quite a lot of chat about Promise on a Cherry since the game.
Mm.
Obviously, going into the season, I think as was the case last year, there's pressure on him. The price tag will always create that pressure on
Mm.
him. Some fans, actually, a lot of fans, kind of talking about whether he's actually a goal scorer. That's kind of the debate I think has kind of surrounded him since he's been a Bristol Rovers player, and obviously this was his first start in a competitive outing since I think his injury was the beginning of March. So
Yeah.
again, another player who probably isn't at his sharpest, but did feature through pre-season. Where do you stand on Promise at the moment? I think there was a lot of criticism. Some of it I think was fair. Some of
Yeah.
it kind of seemed fueled by frustration with the lack of goals that have kind of well, it's gone on for way too long now.
Yeah, 100%. And I said all throughout the summer, I felt sorry for him with his price tag because relatively early on, you kind of tell that that's a heavy tag, and let's be honest, Rovers will. I think and he's only been here a year. I think will struggle to reap anything from the investment there. But there was something now I kind of saw with him. I thought, well, if we can kind of get that out of him, but looking at Saturday, and as I said, it's been out a long time, been out for 4 or 5 months competitively anyway. And I thought Saturday was the best game for him to make an impact. I said there was quite a lot of actual Rovers fans there, given the attendance. It was quite a lot, most of that was Rovers fans there. There wasn't a large away following. They're all going to be right behind you. And I just thought that's the game for you to show up and show what you can bring to this division. And he didn't do it. Um, and again, some of the criticism he got, I think, has been a bit over the top. But I think the one thing that stood out for me was his lack of aerial duels that he won. It felt like he never won any. I'm sure he won a couple, but just his overall presence in the team, I kind of feel like it hindered us a little bit. And you saw the substitution with Harrison coming on; it was a complete 180 in the energy going forward. Harrison's unlucky with that chance, but you know, just a complete 180 in terms of his fitness as well. He just didn't seem fit, and this is a guy that we were told when he came in has had fitness problems. Only managed an hour average throughout Fleetwood the season before, and the fact he's still sort of struggling with that. I know he's had injuries as well, but I'm kind of thinking, what do Rovers kind of get out of him at this point? I'm not saying Rovers cut their losses immediately and sell him before the end of the window, but if he gets to January and he's still not really kicking on, I do kind of wonder what his role really is
Yeah.
because he's definitely not a lone striker. He needs to play up front with somebody.
Mm.
And he looked really isolated on the weekend, I thought.
What constitutes a success for him then? Because if the debate is going to be that he's not a natural goal scorer, but he's playing up front, surely we're going to
Yeah,
judge him on goals. And I think he has been judged on goals since he's been here.
yeah,
And frankly, he's just not scored enough. But with all due respect,
mm,
I agree with you. I think for me, the fitness thing, it seems to be the main kind of talking point whenever we talk about him. I think he came back from his first injury when he was at Rovers. I think that was the Wrexham game last year around Christmas time.
yeah,
He came back and he came off the bench and he scored the equaliser. And I remember doing press with him after. And by the way, he's a top guy. He's a really nice
yeah,
lad. Um, and he was saying, this is the sharpest I've felt. I wasn't fully fit. I had a disjointed pre-season and all of that. And then he went and scored in the other game as well. And I think at that point you're looking at it's like, right, finally he's going to kick on now.
mm,
Next, I think the next game was at Stevenage defeating Cowday's first game, and Rove got tonked. And
mm,
then within however many minutes it was on New Year's Day, he's pulling up with a hamstring injury again, and he's out for 2 months. Fast forward to March, and it's the same thing. He comes back, a couple games, probably should have scored in the Shrewsbury one,
yeah,
and then he's getting injured again. So yeah, I agree with you. I just wonder whether that's always going to be in the back of his mind, whether
yeah,
getting an injury. I don't know. I don't want to be speculative on that front. Only he can kind of reveal that. But I think Promise Omacheri is not someone that needs to be judged on goals. Myself, I think we're going to have to judge him on his work rate off the ball. I know he kind of
yeah,
he did that in pre-season a lot. He used his strength really well. He uses his body. He can kind of
yeah,
shoulder off defenders off the ball. And create chances for his teammates. But I do agree. I think there's certainly going to be a deadline. I think with Darryl
mm,
Clark and obviously bringing in two strikers. We'll talk about we'll talk about both of them actually
mm,
later on. But I think there is going to be kind of a time limit for Promise as a starter. I don't think
yeah,
he should be cut out straight
no,
away. I think he still needs to be starting games and he needs to be built up. I think it's going to be a process with him. I think there has to be a bit of patience, but I totally understand his frustration because they've already been patient for a year and yeah, it's just not quite clicked yet. But looking at the other players
mm,
kind of that started, Luke Southwood in goal, obviously he's been named vice captain. Maybe not the best debut for him. I know Harrogate didn't have many chances. He made two decent saves towards the end. I think it was a back three of Clinton Mola coming in, obviously having not played in pre-season, Alfred Kilgore and Taylor Moore, with I think it was Joel Senior
mm.
and who was left wing back?
Sparks.
It's Jack Sparks. How have I forgotten that? Well, let's talk
Amazing.
about
I
those.
remember, to be honest.
I know
I
those. I know
always
it's
forget.
just yeah, it's just blank. It's been a long time. I've tried to put Saturday out of my mind. Well, we'll talk about some of those players. I think the decision. I was going to talk about it later, but let's talk about Kilgore being named captain. What do you make of that as a decision?
I'm pleased with it. I said when he first came back, he should have been captain straight away. Then when I read up on his injury record, I wasn't too sure because I thought he's missed quite a bit of time. He's had problems with his I don't know, both of his knees, but knee injuries going back to when he was a youngster. Um, I think there's a bit of a hole in that centre half department, shall we say? I think with the situation over the weekend, so I think that's probably given him more of an opportunity. But you look in that team there, really, who's the best option for a captain? It's going to be him. There's no one else really that I kind of look at it. McEachran perhaps. He's got that leadership role, but you've seen what happened when clubs have signed new players and they've been given the captaincy straight away. They didn't really get the club. I know Kilgore was away for a couple of years, but Kilgore gets the club. He knows what it's about. Is he the best centre half in the division? That's up for debate. But is he good enough where you can always rely on a solid hand? For Kilgore, I think he's perfect for that role.
Yeah. Well, if he plays 40 out of the 46 games,
Yeah, yeah,
like he did on Saturday, then I think Rovers are in for a winner. Yeah, he really did speak with passion post match, and
mm,
it's clearly meant a lot to him. So yeah, I totally echo your thoughts. I think it's a fantastic decision, but I think it's one that we probably could have foreseen. I guess as a player who's work with Darryl Clark, and
Mm.
obviously with Luke Southwood getting the vice captaincy, you can clearly see what the thought process was there. But he's also said there's going to be a leadership group. I think it's 5 or 6 players. He
Mm.
didn't say who, but I bet your bottom dollar that Ellis Harrison's in there.
Mm.
Josh McEachran must be, maybe Taylor Moore, players
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, look, I think Daryl knows what he wants from his leaders. I think he's got enough players there to kind of be given the reins to do that effectively and run that changing room, manage that changing room. And yeah, no, I think it's a really good decision. Talk about some of the other players in there. Jack Sparks, it was his debut.
Mm.
I thought, as we've seen through pre-season, delivery is fantastic. Those corners were causing a real issue for the Harrogate defence. Maybe went a bit quiet when Rovers as a team are having their lull, but I thought, he had a decent enough debut. Joel Senior, I've been singing his praises through pre-season. I thought he had another solid game, and I actually thought Clint Mola did okay. I know he's kind of subject to mixed opinion as well. Maybe another player who's been a bit of a scapegoat over the last year, but I thought he proved that left centre back in a three is his best position. I think
Yeah.
better than left back. But yeah, I guess it was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? He hasn't played through all of pre-season, didn't play a single minute, and obviously in the
Yeah.
starting lineup.
Yeah. 100% for me. I said as soon as that lineup was out, I thought, well, if you're gonna, I'd say chuck someone in at centre half, Dan Ellison. It's a big occasion, but he's played minutes, and Mola's not played any. Um, but I will say with Mola, I thought at the start of last season he was one of our best players.
Yeah, he
And I
was.
think so. Something happened around November. Like it was you can't sort of tell it was around sort of November, December time, and his form completely tanked. And but I always thought there was a good player in there. And I said earlier on when we first signed him, I said if he can play well, I think he'll. Not that everyone likes to talk about players being sold, but he'll go for a good amount of money. Um, and you can still see why he was so highly rated at clubs like Reading in the past. You don't just lose whatever talent you've got. You don't just lose that overnight. So I was really pleased for him that he had a decent game for the most part. I was a bit head in hands when he went down after 5 minutes. I thought, oh no, I mean, it's one of those risks you chuck him in and they get hurt. And I don't think it was even in regards to his injury came. I think believe
No, I think
come
someone
off in
hit
his
him in the
arm.
face. Yeah, I think someone hit him in the
Yeah.
face or something.
So, and that's always a grey area because with head injuries and stuff, they've got to check everything, even if it's something minor. All the physios come on and they all look at that. So no, I was pleased for Mola because he's a good centre half, and left back definitely isn't his position. I did think he's got the pace of a left back, but he's also not slow for a centre half, so it's a bit
Mm.
of an in between for him. So yeah, left over through I think will suit him fine.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with all of that. I mean, I know Matt Taylor said he should be playing in the championship when he was kind of having that good spell at the beginning of his
Mm.
Rovers tenure. I know I asked Darryl about it post game, and his kind of reasoning was, although he hasn't played in pre-season, that's kind of been just precautionary because he had surgery on his wrist. He's still been doing fitness drills, so his fitness was fine. And I think Brian Belongo would have been the alternative in that left centre back position, and he didn't sound overly convinced because he's kind of raw in that role. So yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Going into the midfield, obviously McEachran had his debut. Cameron Conte, we've spoken about his first start for 8 months, and then we've talked about promise. I think we'll keep it brief on the other two forwards because I think again there was just not enough from the front line. We know what Luke Thomas is about and what he can do. And I think we're all really hopeful of him finally having that season that we all know he's capable of in a Rover shirt. We kind of saw it 2 years ago um,
Mm.
when he got his best numbers of his career.
Yeah.
And then Raul Sotirio as well, obviously ended last season on a decent goal scoring streak. But yeah, again, I think we want to see more from them for sure. I guess how many of those positions are up for grabs this weekend, do you think?
Well, I think the main striker position is definitely up for grabs. I think Harrison can definitely put his name in the hat for that.
Yeah.
In regards to the new striker we've signed, I can't pronounce his last name, so bear with. But I think Rovers obviously, taking precautions and making sure he's ready to go. Um, And besides that, I think Thomas definitely starts. Does Hutchinson come in for Soterio? I know it's a slightly, I know he's not up front or anything, but sort of just behind the front man, it's possible. But I think Thomas definitely starts. I think it's a big season for him personally. I think this is almost says his last chance, but I believe it's the last year of his contract. So
Yeah, it is.
it's a big season for him. So I think for now, I think the squad almost picks itself because I think sort of the first 11 picks itself. Because you look beyond sort of maybe 13 players, perhaps it does start to sort of drop off quite a little bit. So I don't think we'll see too many changes to the main starting 11 until more outgoings happen or more incomings happen. I think it might be a while before we start to see a couple of those.
I mean, off the top of my head, I think the only player that's potentially knocking on the door, besides Ellis Harrison, is maybe Isaac Hutchinson.
Yeah.
If they want to kind of beef up the midfield a little bit with another player in there to kind of sit above Conte and McEachran and then bring out one of the forwards. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think right now it probably does pick itself. But there's obviously going to be a conversation to be had this weekend. As we sit here, we haven't had pre-match press, so we haven't spoke to Daryl Clark about his new signing, Fabrizio Caven. I think that's how we're pronouncing it. That's what I'm going with anyway. I did ask him about it on Saturday. He kind of said they need to be careful. He'll do some light training on Monday. We speak to him on a Thursday, so we'll see how that new striker's gotten on. I've seen a lot of comments saying he needs to be thrown straight in. I'm 99% sure that's just not going to be the case. I think Daryl will have to manage him. There shouldn't be any doubts about his fitness. He's already played 2 games competitively in the Conference League and I think the first league game for the Dues, as well as a pre-season. So minutes wise, he should be fine, but integrating him into the group, I think, is what the process, which is going to take a bit of time, is. But yeah, obviously, bit of an unorthodox signing, I guess. I think Daryl called it a wild card. Um, signing signing a player from the Swiss second division. I mean, I know there's been rumours going around the last few weeks, be it on the forum or on social media, but I don't know. Were you surprised that those rumours have actually proven to be true and materialised? I guess you were in the room when Ricky Martin teased that there would be a striker coming in soon, at the fans forum. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, when he said that, do you expect it to be this Swiss striker?
Yeah, I personally didn't. I mean, again, it was heavily rumored. You see people, and they're always just tweeting this, the Swiss flag, and I'm like, well, I'm not one who reads too much into rumors, to be honest. I still quite like the element of surprise a little bit, and most of the times rumors, they are just that.
Yeah.
But when they are quite strong and it's reported by several people, and you think, okay, it might be something in that. And yeah, so it was completely out of the blue signing in terms of no one knows who the guy is. No one really knows anything about him. It's completely left field, and it's refreshing to see because Rovers never make these sort of signings. Not many teams in this division make signings like that. So for Rovers to have the guts to go and do it and to take a punt on an unknown in English football, he's had a quite good record in playing in Swiss football, but it's exciting. It's exciting and intriguing at the same time because this could do really well. And I think as long as people give him time, he needs time to bed to the English game. It's easy for us in Syria and so there's 22 people, kicking the ball around, and every league and division is a different style, and it's going to be one where he might adapt easily. Might take him a bit of time, but either way, if he gives 110%, and he just provides something different to what we already have, then I think that will go a long way. As long as he can, just give us something which we don't have. And at the minute going forward, we seem to be quite wooden. We're quite obvious in the way we play. If he's got a little bit of a spark to his game, which players like Satiri might not have, then I think you're doing well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like he's got a different skill set to all the other
Mm.
strikers at the club. He looks in terms of a physical profile. I think the club said he's 5'9", so he's a bit smaller, maybe a bit more agile, a bit nimble, can stretch the line. Supposedly relatively quick. We'll obviously
Mm.
see when he's in action. But yeah, like you say, great goal record, 46 goal contributions in 84 appearances. over the last 2 seasons. I think the key question is, how does the Swiss second division compare to League
Exactly.
Two?
Yeah.
Obviously, some of those goals have been in Europa Conference League qualifying. Um, Once they get through winning the Liechtenstein Cup, it's very interesting that a second division team is playing in Europe. But yeah, I mean, as we sit here, it's Rule Satiru, Promisor Macheri, Ellis Harrison, Fabrizio Cavent, and then obviously 17-year-old Ollie Dewsbury. It sounds as though five is probably the number that it's going to be. I think now, if they were to sign another forward, it would probably be to replace someone, whether that be maybe. I think Wolsteria is the only one out there who could be sold or could be subject to speculation, and then
Mm.
it's kind of more about whether they make the decision to give Ollie Dewsbury another loan. But I think Daryl Clark's clearly been very impressed with him. So yeah, interested to see what happens there. But yeah, like you say, I who knows? It is quite exciting. I think it's something different. Again, we're kind of asking Daryl Clark about it after the game Saturday, and he kind of made the point that that type of striker, that kind of small and nimble, can stretch the lines kind of forward. In England, they were just way too overvalued. They were just their price tags were way too inflated. They were too expensive. So yeah, I do kind of rate it in a way. They've done something different. I
Mm.
saw not the top 20 call him the most interesting signing in League Two, I think is it was. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of eyes on him, obviously being a new striker for a promotion contender, shall we say.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it'll be interesting nonetheless. I think it's important not to put too much expectation on his shoulders, but already
No.
naturally that's already happened.
Yeah, yeah, naturally. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens on Saturday at Fleetwood. We will go on to the Fleetwood game shortly, but I think the biggest talking point kind of this week in the build up to the weekend. As we're sat here, it's Tuesday night. I know this is probably going out on Thursday, so I'd like to think it is probably done, or at least it is happening. Connor Taylor's obviously leaving the football club. It looks like he'll be going to Wickham. A deal was agreed. A couple of different reports about a fee. I think 600K seems like the most realistic one. I know for a fact it's a healthy profit on kind of the 300 grand that was reported 2 years ago. But yeah, obviously a very popular player. Daryl obviously said he'd handed in a transfer request amid all the bids and speculation. What's your thoughts on it? What's your thoughts on seeing Connor Taylor leave?
I'm disappointed he's going. So I think he's been a good servant for us. He's not necessarily always been the best player on the pitch, but you could tell he's always left his heart on the pitch. And I spoke to him after we were relegated, and he was probably one of only a few players that were genuinely hurting. So I can understand him wanting to leave. Obviously, he's put a transfer request, and there's been a lot of transfer talk with him all summer long about is he going to go, is he going to stay. I'm surprised he's still here as late in the window he is. I thought he may have gone sort of at least a month ago. But the fact he's off, as I said, it's disappointing he's gone. But if he wants to go and better his career and improve and stuff, I know I think he's recently had a newborn into his family. So if it's a better opportunity for him and his family to move, then he's to anyone to stand in his way, and I think he's earned enough credit with the Rovers fans to go and better himself. He's a big part of that promotion team a few years ago. I know he was only on loan, but so he's already built up that good face. So I think some of the comments towards him from some people have been a little bit unfair. I think it's okay to say it's a bit gutting to see him go, and it's disappointing, and we all wish he would stay. But and people don't like hearing this, and I don't like it either. But being a footballer is a job, and if someone comes in and they're offering you a better pay packet, go and chase it.
Yeah, no, mate, I totally agree with all of that. I think the most encouraging thing is at least it sounds like Rovers will be going for at least one more defender because I think they need that. I don't think they can
Yeah.
go into the long haul of League Two a centre back down, and especially a centre back as good as Connor Taylor is. But yeah, as you say, I think it's been coming all summer. Really, I'm a little bit surprised it's taken this long. These things do take time, I guess, but Yeah, I think that first report of a Peterborough bid was coming up 2 months ago. So
Mm.
yeah, it's taking its time. Look, Wycombe's a good club. They did well last season. I don't think they'll have the season they had last year. They seem to kind of really peter out second half of last year when they lost Matt Boonfield, so we'll see what the current boss is like with a full preseason under his belt. But yeah, it's League One football. At the end of the day, something Rovers can't
Mm.
offer. So I think we wish him all the best. Maybe a little bit disappointed to see how it's ended, but there's two sides to every story. I guess quickly, well, before we run out of time, a little word on Kofi Shaw's sale as well, because that was big news last week that he's gone to Brighton. I know that was something kind of speculated for a long time, but it sounds like the club have got a significant fee. I mean, as a fan, seeing an 18-year-old from the academy go to a Premier League club, just to kind of summarize how that feels.
Yeah, like I was pleased for him that he's got a move because you know I guess one thing I've noticed getting older as a football fan, like you realise that players are younger than you, and you almost feel like a dad almost when they go off
Yeah,
to a Premier League side. And I think everyone felt like that when Elliot Anderson was there a little bit in a way, even though it was a different situation. But um, yeah, I was really pleased for him that he's got the move because um, you know if there's one positive sort of to come out of how poor last season was,
yeah,
he was a shining light in how bad the last 10 games were. He's shone brighter than anybody. So I think he's gone to a good club in Brighton as well. I've been to one of their games before. Good people, and there's good people working there. So hopefully for him, he gets the opportunity to hopefully not just sit in their under 23s for the next 3 or 4 years and then just gets cut with no extra game time. Because unfortunately, that does happen a lot when starlets from lower divisions they get signed up and they never play. But I think Kofi's got something about him um, which will put him in good stead. League Two is a very physical league. We saw that really early on the weekend. Like this is a tough league with the size of some of these centre halves. They're big boys. Um, and Kofi, I think, could have potentially struggled with that. So the fact he's got a chance to almost sort of reinvent himself with Brian, he's going to be a completely different player once he comes out of their academy. Um, it's going to be good for him. So yeah, I'm gutted he's gone because again he could have been a real difference maker for us this season. But to get a move like that, then it's double thumbs up for me. I'm really pleased for him.
yeah. Nicely summarised, mate. I think just lastly, then, Fleetwood on the weekend relegated 2 seasons ago from League One.
Mm.
Mid-table finish in League Two last year. I've just been looking at a couple of their signs. I think the biggest name is Ched Evans on a free.
Mm.
But they did win their opening game away at Barnet. It's something that maybe punters weren't necessarily expecting. So yeah, obviously Rovers haven't won away since January. How are you feeling about maybe that hoodoo being ended this weekend?
My confidence isn't that high. I got to be brutally honest. I've never wanted to say to draw your first away game, but Fleetwood is one of those away teams you look at and you immediately roll your eyes at, or you slam your eyes. They're one of those teams which you play on a Tuesday night you don't want to go to. So, the fact it's early on in the season, whether that's a psychological impact, I have no idea. But, um, I personally sit in it, I can't see Rovers winning it. I think it's important that we don't lose because it at least
Yeah.
stops the rot of last coming into this season. Um, you know, I wouldn't say I'd be happy with the point, but it's one of those you take and you move on as quickly as you can. The first 3 points are really important, but I just can't see it at the moment. I just can't see it from this weekend. Again, I think come the end of the season we'll be above Fleetwood. But speaking in August, I just don't think we've got enough ultimately in the final third just yet, where we're not firing on all cylinders, and I just don't think we've quite got enough just to get past them.
Good stuff, Jake. Thank you very much for joining me for our first episode. Hopefully, a lot more conversations, a lot more positive conversations to have in the season. If you've been listening, thank you very much for tuning in. The same if you've been watching. Follow on socials and yeah, listen out for more.